Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dave Velasco, and my presentation today is on Miami-Dade County and looks into the effects of climate change on the county. On Miami's demographic background, more than 2/3 of the population is made up of Hispanics or Latinos, and this is due to a rich history of Latin American immigration into the county. There are more than 2.7 million inhabitants in the county as of 2019, and this makes it the 7th most populous county in the United States. Miami-Dade County is known for having shifted heavily to the right during the 2020 election due to Republican messaging towards the large base of Cuban American voters within the county. Miami's economic background, well, it's a significant investment hub because of its geographic and cultural proximity to Latin America, and major sectors in the county include healthcare, social services, financial services, and tourism. And the current unemployment rate is 8.8%. However, in February of last year, before the pandemic began, it was only 1.9%. The county outperformed the rest of the country when it posted 4% in GDP growth in 2018. And the average income for a resident of the county is $23,000, which is less than the average American. Now, on Miami's geographic background, it is located in the southeastern part of Florida, and pretty much the entire western half of the county is made up of the Everglades, which is a national park that's made up of mangrove forests and sawgrass. Now, looking more towards the developed metropolitan areas of Miami, towards the east, we have the most developed and densest areas of Miami with many mixed-use developments. Towards the west parts of the developed areas, we have many suburban communities. Right in the middle, you have Miami International Airport, and towards the bottom, you have more agriculturally oriented communities. Now, looking into Miami's transportation history, you see a trend that follows that of most American cities throughout the 20th century. So, for example, in 1915, streetcars were introduced. This marks, the introduction of lots of public transit throughout Miami that's prominent throughout the early 20th century. But by 1950, the car is a dominant mode of transportation. And in 1961, the first proper highway is built, and it is built through a prominent African-American community. In 1984, Metrorail opens, and Metrorail remains the only subway style of public transit that exists in Miami-Dade County today. And it has hardly expanded since it was first opened. In 2002, in a promising effort to expand Metrorail, Miami-Dade voters approved the half-cent tax. However, most of that has since been used to fund existing debts rather than actually expand Metrorail, and only 2 stops have been added ever since that happened. Now, looking more closely into Miami's climate dilemma, there are 2 effects of climate change that affect Miami the most. The first is sea level rise. So sea levels are supposed to increase by 1 foot by 2050 and by 3 feet by 2100. And of course, this affects Miami because it's a very low-lying flat area next to the coast. And the second thing that affects Miami are the hurricanes, which of course come in the form of general damage, because although Miami has a very strong infrastructure and housing stock that has over time through regulation generated lots of resilience against hurricanes, is still susceptible to general damage across the more vulnerable communities. But storm surge is really the thing that worries most people here, considering the fact that a Category 4 hurricane, which is becoming more and more likely, can generate a storm surge of up to 6 to 8 feet if it's just Category 4. And to see how this would affect Miami, I got a map here of which areas would be affected by how many feet of sea level rise. And you see green are areas that are vulnerable, and blue or would be areas that are underwater. So this is 0 feet. This is today. This is 3 feet. This is 5 feet. And this is 7 feet. As you can see, a storm surge would cause significant damage if nothing is done to prevent it, and billions of dollars will need to be spent in order to protect against the encroachment of the sea and the rivers and the Everglades on developed land. Now, there are some things that you need to know about Miami's proposed solutions. And the first one is that it varies by jurisdiction, right? So while the county has the most comprehensive plan to, protect the entire area from climate change, each city also has their own approaches or no approach at all. The other thing is that it's not entirely composed. So many of these things are not, complete solutions. Many of them are piecemeal solutions that have been proposed to address, half the problem, a third of the problem. Many of these are not comprehensive. And the last thing is that sea level rise is taken for granted. Many of these solutions aren't, preventative. They're simply seeking to restrict the amount of damage that will happen. And actually, going back for a second, if you look down here, pretty much the entire downtown of Miami and almost the entirety of Miami Beach is already underwater with just 5 feet of sea level rise. With 7 feet, you can see that pretty much the entire financial district is underwater, and the entirety of Miami Beach is underwater as well. So depending on the jurisdiction, there have been many proposed solutions. I found that Miami-Dade County has the most comprehensive set of solutions. And the most significant one is the expansion of the canal system. So in order to move water to where it's needed and to where it's not needed, there must be an expansion of the canal system through the digging of more canals or the enlargement of existing ones. The second thing that they've proposed, out of many more, is raising land and requiring developers to raise land before they build on it. The city of Miami, which is the largest city within Miami-Dade County, has suggested raising surge barriers. This is mostly to protect against storm surge when storms come in, to prevent the kind of damage that happened, for example, during the last hurricane in 2017, to protect its downtown and more vulnerable coastal areas. Miami Beach has prioritized protecting its beaches, and therefore has tried to protect its beach dunes by restricting construction or the erosion of its beach dunes. Beach dunes provide natural barrier against sea level rise, as well as beach erosion and storm surge. So this is a good approach. However, it's not enough. And because of sea level rise that they can't stop, they have decided to begin dumping large quantities of sand on the shore in order to maintain the size and integrity of the beach. Now, the city of Doral, which was once a swamp, has decided to use the same strategies it used when it was deswamping, which is pumping all the water that comes in out of the city. Now, to just get a better idea of what the rest of the smaller cities of Miami are doing, all of which are very vulnerable to the risk of climate change. The city of Hialeah, which is 200,000 people, has not passed a single law or ordinance relating to climate change in its history, and has only passed a resolution addressing climate change in 2015. Not anything since, and has actually sponsored a climate change art show, and which goes to show you how not seriously many of these cities are taking the risks that are associated with climate change, sea level rise, and the increased devastation of the hurricanes that come from it. So my conclusion is that Miami-Dade County and its cities do not have a collaborative set of long-term solutions to address its sea level rise and the hurricane concerns. In this case, we are glad that the county is taking more comprehensive steps, but greater collaboration between Miami-Dade County and its cities have to be made in order to address each jurisdiction's priorities and set of vulnerable its set of concerns And here are a few questions that I thought would be important to ask as it relates to solving this problem. So the first one is, how can the county or state encourage a more collaborative approach to solving this problem, which deals with my conclusion. And the second is, will the county be forced to permanently evacuate some areas? So do you think that the county might eventually force those people that live in less valuable areas, so low income people, usually minorities, will they be forced out in order to make way for perhaps floodplains or canals? Instead of highways, it might be canals, and these vulnerable communities might be sacrificed in order to protect the rest of the city. Here are my sources, and thank you so very much for listening.